Hey guys, how you doing? Good morning. I hope you're having a good day so far. The news today is very serious. Very dire news. It's so serious that I'm going to do my best to try and ridicule it and make fun of it as best I can. But that may be difficult because it is so serious. The war between the United States and Canada is escalating. The trade war, as you guys probably all know, after the US election, immediately the US federal government had launched a trade war against Canada and Mexico and China. With respect to Canada, that meant 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and 10% on energy, oil and gas mainly. Now, it seemed like cooler heads would prevail because just as those tariffs were going to take place, they were delayed by the US administration for 30 days. But then 30 days later, they were put back on, and then they were kind of delayed, and then they were on and off and on and off and on and off. And eventually, they landed on 25% tariffs on not all Canadian goods, but a lot of Canadian goods, and 10% tariffs on our energy. And that decision, of course, was championed by the president himself. Now, our federal government retaliated immediately with 25% tariffs on the United States on selected goods. And things were kind of being a little bit tense, and there was arguing back and forth, and there was a lot of chest pounding and rhetoric going on, and it seemed like we were kind of locked into that situation. But yesterday along came Captain Canada, the Premier of Ontario. Now I gotta explain, because Canada is a little bit of a strange country. We inherited our political structure from Great Britain, which it's not so great. The situation we're in here now is that we really don't have a prime minister. Well, we actually do have a prime minister, but he was so unpopular and so low in the polls that he feared that his party might be wiped out in the next election. So what he did is he shut down Parliament and resigned. But in Canada, resign means he's still the prime minister until his party chooses a successor to him, which they have done now. So they've chosen a successor who is going to be our prime minister soon, but nobody voted for him. So thank you, Great Britain, for handing us this excellent way of governing ourselves, where we can now have a prime minister that nobody in the country voted for. Just a few liberals, they had a meeting and they decided that this guy would be the best guy to run their party, and then ipso facto just become our prime minister. But the point is that during this turmoil in our political situation in Canada, where we are basically leaderless, Captain Canada from Ontario stepped in and said, well, I'm a big guy and I want to escalate the situation here. So I know that the federal government has reciprocal tariffs against the US and things are kind of tense now. So I think that the best thing for me to do would be to poke the bear even more. And the Premier of Ontario announced yesterday that he would implement 25% surtax on electricity going to 3 northern U.S. states. I believe New York, Michigan, and Wisconsin. 3 states that border Ontario will now be subject to a 25% tax on the electricity that they get from Ontario. And he has escalated things even more, saying he would have no problem shutting off the electricity. He said he would shut off the electricity with a smile on his face. Why did he do this? Well, because I think he was a little upset that the President of the United States was getting all the press. And this guy's, this Ontario Premier is also kind of one of these guys that likes to be on TV a lot. He even got himself a funny hat that he could be filmed in that says Canada's not for sale. And he's very large and he likes to walk around bombastically and seem like he's really tough. So he did not just threaten the United States with this tax, he implemented it. And of course, the President of the United States was not very happy. Now, I watched a show just the other day that said you can kind of figure out a level of intelligence of someone by analyzing how well they are at thinking of this. When they do something, to kind of think, what will happen next? And Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, I think is very low on the intelligence level. Probably didn't think that through, because any sane person would have maybe sat and thought, okay, if I escalate this and impose a tax on electricity going to the United States, what will happen next in this tumultuous turmoil of a time when things are so tense? What could possibly happen next? He didn't really think that through. So what happened next is, of course, the United States has escalated. And this is the statement that the President of the United States just made today. Based on Ontario, Canada, placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I have instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff to 50% on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada, one of the highest tariffing nations anywhere in the world, the President of the United States wrote. This will go into effect tomorrow morning, March 12th. And now the situation is that there will be an additional 25% tariff, 50% tariff on all Canadian steel and aluminum exports. But the ironic thing is that almost all of our aluminum exports come from Quebec. And Doug is the Premier of Ontario. And Quebec, those French guys go, what the fuck are you doing, you stupid ass? So you have, the people in Quebec didn't vote for Doug. I didn't vote for Doug. Nobody in Canada voted for Doug Ford except the people in Ontario. But he has escalated the situation now so that Quebec is going to get crushed under 50% tariffs from the United States. So let's think. What could happen next, Doug thought, before Captain Canada launched out and announced retaliation against the U.S. by taxing their electricity. He probably sat there and thought, what could happen next? Oh, I know, I'll get on TV and everyone will think I'm strong and I'm a really cool dude. Well, way to go, Dougie. Now you've escalated things even to a higher level, and it's going to be a big shit show. And the poor French people from Quebec, what the hell has happened? All of a sudden, our economy is going to go in the toilet. It is all because of that stupid English person next door. Fuck you. And we are French. We will let the baby smoke. What are you doing, Doug, you idiot? And now it's gotten even to the point where it's absolutely ridiculous rhetoric. Let me read you the final statement here. We will shortly be declaring a national emergency on electricity within the threatened area. This will allow the U.S. to quickly do what has to be done to alleviate this abusive threat from Canada, from Ontario actually. The U.S. President also declared that if Canada does not lift other egregious long-time tariffs, the U.S. will substantially increase tariffs on automobiles on April 2nd. This will essentially permanently shut down the automobile manufacturing business in Canada. The President of the United States continued, this cannot continue. The only thing that makes sense is for Canada to become our cherished 51st state, to which 40 million Canadians immediately responded, go fuck yourself. He continued, the artificial line of separation drawn many years ago will finally disappear, and we will have the safest and most beautiful nation anywhere in the world. And your brilliant anthem, O Canada, will continue to play, but now representing a great and powerful state within the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. A little bit of an escalation, I guess, is how we should describe this. What did you expect would happen, Doug Ford? Things were kind of like this, and things were tense, and things were, no one really knew what was going to happen. The market was collapsing. It was very tense. There were negotiations happening behind the scenes. There were diplomats calling each other and setting up meetings and trying to de-escalate and trying to get things back into some sort of semblance of normalcy. And here comes Captain Canada, Doug Ford. I think we'll tax electricity. And I'll turn it off with a smile on my face if I have to. Dum, 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 dum. I wonder what'll happen now. Well, no one can accuse Doug Ford of being a smart man. And nobody in Canada voted for the buffoon except for some people in Ontario. And now the rest of the country is going to get crushed because of his stupidity. And the ones that are going to get crushed the most are the poor French people in Quebec because they have all the aluminum. So all the poor people in Quebec are, I will have my baguette this morning, but apparently the economy is not very good. Maybe we will require more transfer payment from the government. It's just a shit show. It's just a complete and utter disaster. I'll end it with this statement from Doug Ford, who now apparently represents Canada. He says, "We will not back down." And when he says we, I guess he's referring to all these people in other provinces that didn't vote for him. He says, "We will not back down. We will be relentless," Ford said. "I will relentlessly screw everybody, but I'll be on TV a lot wearing my hat. So I'll become very popular." Wait, hold on, hold the presses. Just as I was going to end this video, there's been a news flash. Just moments after Doug Ford on live national U.S. television declared that he would be relentless and never back down, he received a call from a U.S. trade negotiator, and we're not really sure what was discussed in the call, but it's probably something to the effect of the U.S. trade negotiator explaining that, Mr. Doug Ford, you have a very small Canadian peepee, and I have a very large American peepee, and you need to back down. So moments after declaring that he would be relentless and never back down, he's now made a statement that says, "I've relented and I back down." And I'm not even kidding. This has all happened in one day. He has now relented and backed down and said, okay, he's not going to apply a tax on electricity exports to New York and a couple other states. And in return, the United States has now softened their rhetoric and said, okay, they're not going to raise the tariffs to 50%. They're only going to be 25%. And the French people in Quebec are going, whew, that was a close one. And this is just all in one day. And this is all thanks to Mr. Big Doug Ford. He did get on television a lot, and he got to wear his hat, so he probably feels pretty good. It's just a complete and total disastrous shit show. And all it's achieved is that everyone is a little bit more stressed out, and the market's dropped a little bit more. And, all these buffoons with big egos can keep trying to insult each other while the rest of us just huddle around and wait and worry to try and see what's going to happen. What a complete disaster of a day. And I don't know, these videos are becoming maybe a little bit too much for me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this up, guys. All right. Let me know in the comment section whether you think this is going to keep escalating, whether cooler heads will prevail, or whether we're just at the mercy of whoever has the biggest ego will screw us the most, I guess is what's going to happen. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.